Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1948. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana. We all know what happens there, with a very special guest by the name of Mike Simmons. Mike, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have it in gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I am ready, Mark.
Absolutely. Now, I'll tell our listeners that Mike and I met back in 2018. I was honored to be a guest speaker at a dinner for the Forest Grove Concours, and there were some great people there, including Mike. So I finally have landed you. You've been a busy guy all these years creating this very cool club that you've created. But before I introduce you and we talk about it, what's one little thing that most people don't know about you, Mike?
Well, I would say I don't know if it's my claim to fame, probably not, maybe infamy, would be that I was both kicked out of college and fired very, very early in my career. So I learned what it was like to be asked not to return in a couple of different venues.
So that begs the question. Obviously, that builds a little bit of character, but it also gives you some perspective. What were the biggest takeaways? And, I asked a question during this interview about challenges, but this is kind of the same thing. What were the takeaways from those two experiences? Because as a young person, I would assume that was maybe a little devastating.
Yes, particularly to my mother, who thought it was all over. I was done.
Yeah.
I was going to be homeless, and that was going to be the end. But for me, what I learned from, I actually officially wasn't kicked out of school. I was just asked not to return, that's a slightly different thing.
Okay.
But
well, however you want to frame it.
But it was just it was a really long story, but it was just one of these things where I got crossways with a professor it was really a complete misunderstanding. But what I learned was that it didn't really matter as long as he had his view of things. And that was my first real experience of life isn't always going to be fair. So I learned that very, very quickly there, because my appeals were not heard. So that was it for me there.
You learn those hard lessons. I had to put myself through college, which meant I had to wax lots of cars to pay for those tuitions, even though they weren't as expensive back then as they are now. And I had a professor I was really disappointed with. He just was lazy. Just downright lazy. And I went into one of his meetings with him and I kind of called him to the floor. I was kind of angry because, and I believe I said to him, I have to work really hard to pay for these classes and you're not giving me my money's worth. And he looks at me and he goes, "Would you like a passing grade or not?" And I think that was the, maybe I do pay his salary, but it doesn't matter to him. He holds all the cards. So I kind of put my tail between my legs and I said, "Sorry to offend you." And I got up and walked out of his office and realized, okay, diplomacy sometimes is the better path in these cases.
We all learn from those experiences, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. But I can still say today I was very disappointed. I was not getting my money's worth from that guy for sure. Yeah, I couldn't believe he was still a professor and doing what he was doing, but I guess he had tenure or something like that. So yeah, couldn't be kicked out. Well, let me give you a proper introduction. We're going to talk about a very exciting thing you're doing with your life. Mike Simmons is the founder of the Silo Auto Club and Conservancy. It started when he went looking for a space to store his car collection. He purchased a defunct Chef's Academy in downtown Indianapolis in 2017 and completely remodeled it to a space, and Silo was born. The venue combines car storage with a private enthusiast club and an event facility. His club provides high-end automotive events, concerts of all varieties, wine and spirit tasting, cigar nights, race watch parties, say that 10 times fast, racing simulators, and unique automotive lifestyle events. Sounds like fun. His career has been in engineering and technology, having built and sold his company, and since 2016, he's been investing in numerous tech companies and serving on nonprofit boards. Very cool. We'll be back in just a minute, but first a word from our sponsors, so give them a little love, because they're the reason we're here today, and we'll be right back. Covercraft's newest 5-layer indoor cover is especially engineered for indoor use, providing maximum dust protection when your vehicle's stored in the garage. Your 5-layer indoor cover is custom tailored with Covercraft's attention to detail, form, and fit with the quality and attention to detail that's been their standard since 1965. Even if your vehicle is always inside, dust and fallout can damage the paint, and an extra layer of soft, breathable material protects from accidental bumps and rubs. Covercraft protects cars, trucks, motorcycles, RVs, trailers, and watercraft too. Every one of my vehicles is protected with a Covercraft cover, custom fit to fit the car like a glove. And I have a deal for you. If you use the code YEAH21 at covercraft.com, you'll get 10% off your order plus free shipping. That's right, 10% off and free shipping. Simply use the code YEAH, YEAH21 at checkout. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. I was tired of my rates for my collector car insurance going up every year for no explainable reason. My carrier seemed to be turning into a media company versus an insurance company, and I realized that a portion of my policy premium was paying for all those so-called free media goodies. So I did my homework, I talked to knowledgeable collectors, shopped around, and discovered American Collectors Insurance. They've been serving the collector car hobby since 1976. You last that long by properly serving your customers' insurance need, not with a lot of fluff. ACI is ranked the #1 online collector car insurance provider according to Google, Trustpilot, Facebook, and they offer their real person guarantee live support. No never-ending phone loops when you need help. Plus, because you don't use your classic car as a daily driver, you could save up to 40% compared to regular auto insurance. American Collectors Insurance provides agreed value policies. So if you experience a total loss to your collector vehicle or it's stolen, you'll be paid the amount listed on your declaration page, less any deductibles, of course. No ifs, ands, or buts. Give them a call today and ask for your free quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. Tell them you're a friend of mine, Mark Greens at Cars Yeah. American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. All right, Mike, so let's dive a little deeper in the corner since you're in Indianapolis where they have that little race every year and a lot more events like that. Let's talk about this great, cool thing because you had a career in technology, you were successful, you sold your business, but you're a young guy, so I imagine you said, okay, what's next? I've got to do something. And you decided to do what all my listeners love. It's kind of a dream come true. Wrap your passion with what you're doing. So tell us about how the Silo Auto Club and Conservancy came to be and what everybody gets to do there who's a member.
Sure, Mark. It was certainly not was not part of the plan. My wife and I had lived kind of out in the burbs here in Indy, and our kids went off and did their thing, and we were empty nesters. And we said, "Hey, life adventure. Let's move right downtown Indy." So we live at 1 Virginia Avenue. I mean, we're right square downtown. And I had about 16, 18 cars that I had scattered around in different locations. And when we moved downtown, I was looking for just a smaller commercial building just to keep my cars in. Mm-hmm. And this much larger building became available, which had the benefit of being about 3 blocks from where I live. So it's ultra
nice,
convenient. It was kind of at the right price. Building wasn't in great shape. And so I decided, okay, well, let's go ahead and do that, thinking long-term real estate play, hopefully that it'll be worth something more someday than what I paid for it. But it also is such a big building that I was not going to fill it up with my own collection. And so it became a bit of a light duty back in the napkin business plan, which is one of those business plans that, as I tell my wife, it doesn't have to make money. I just don't want it to lose money. So it's a little bit of a hobby, hobby rolled into a business plan together. So we have about today, we've got room for about 85 cars. We're pretty much full today. And we've got a full bar. We have kind of a lounge space. We put on events. And so all those things together have turned it into just kind of a cool car person's club here in downtown Indy.
This is so cool. again, I've heard this from many people. I've had many people on the show that have venues somewhat like this. They start as a storage facility for either their own cars or, like you said, it's a real estate venture and they go, I want to be around car guys. I want to do car stuff. And this seems to be a trend when you look at the demographics of baby boomers aging out. They've got collections. They don't have garages that can hold more than 3 cars usually, and they need a place to put cars. To have a place to go or to put your cars, but more importantly, a place to go to be around people that are car like-minded and want to do things. But you've taken it to the next level because you do a lot of different events, right?
Yeah, correct. I think the automotive theme is really the tie that binds. It's the piece that really bring people into the club, but it's evolved into almost more of a lifestyle kind of a club. So just through a number of different coincidences, we do a number of musical events now.
So like bands and
really? Yeah. So we have jazz concerts, and we just started about 5 months ago, maybe now, the Silo Songwriter Series. And that's all local folks who they play music. A lot of times they're playing other people's music. They play covers at small bars, that sort of thing. Here, that night there are no covers. It's all people bringing in their own music that they have written. And we typically have 3 artists on a given night. And there's witty banter usually between the artists and really good music. And they get to really show their own art rather than playing somebody else's music. And that's really been a lot of fun. We've had a good time with that.
Well, Indianapolis is known as a car town, with the racing and everything that happens there. Is that part of the success you think of as you've developed this project, that you're in that city with that mindset, but also I guess another way to say it is if you could do it over again, would you still be down in the heart of the city?
Yeah, I think so. There are some other facilities. There's not anything quite like our facility in Indy, though, of course, as you said, there are plenty of these other places, West Palm, Naples, Chicago, West Coast, but there's not anything quite like this. We thought we would cater primarily to people who live downtown, and I'd say that's probably a third of our membership and the people who have cars stored here. But it's been interesting. It's really broader than that. In fact, we have a good problem to have, I guess, right now, which is we're full. And so the debate is we could expand the building. We have a little bit of room here that we could, or potentially reach out to some other satellite kind of areas, because it's interesting, right? Between the car storage and the event piece, the challenge that we have is when we're full on cars, it makes events a little tougher to do because there's just not as much space.
Right.
So we need a little flexibility around that. And that's probably the current challenge that we're working on.
So start buying up the real estate around you, I guess, is the next challenge. And you're a victim of your success, right?
Well, it is good, right? It's what my GM and I talk about is it's good news, bad news. It's great that we've got that, and really our bread and butter is storage, but the event piece is really the part that makes the whole financial plan really work, is to be able to host those events as well. So we have to have a plan for both sides.
You mentioned your GM's at Jeff Hostetter?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Great. Cool. Well, nice to have somebody there to help with this kind of stuff. Now, there are other things that you guys do for people while their stores are card, where their cars are stored. Oh, that was interesting mind switch. Because a lot of these places provide detailing services, concierge services, all the kind of things.
We do all of the above. So we have an on-site detailer who he's a partner of ours. He has his own business, but he uses the shop here for his own customers, as well as he works with our customers that have vehicles here on site. And yeah, in fact, in that world, one of the use cases that we tend to talk about, particularly for people who live maybe in the suburbs but keep a car here, but maybe they work downtown, is they pull the Lexus in on Friday night and drop it off and pick up the 911 and pull it out the other end. And while the Lexus is here, we clean the Lexus up, we get it ready, we do whatever work. He does a number of the ceramic coatings. I mean, all of the great detail services that he provides. Right. And then on Monday morning, that same person pulls a 911 in on one end and pulls the Lexus out the other.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love it. So in developing this business, when you originally went into it, did you have all these different facets pre-thought out, or is this kind of evolved over time?
Yeah, I would say, Mark, that I had looked at a number of other facilities that looked like this, and a couple of folks were gracious enough to just give me some perspective in other cities around what their business plan looked like and the kinds of services that they provided. So I had some idea of what we wanted to do. But yes, it's been, well, the big kink in all this has been COVID. COVID really, I bought the building a year before we opened it. It took a year to really redo the whole building, and then that was just literally a year or so before COVID hit. And so that caused us to have to rethink things a little bit, because there were no events. So it was really much more about the car storage and how we took care of people's cars for them, and worry less about that particular piece. So yes, there's been a number of pivots and switches along the way here based on that.
Well, if somebody wanted to do something like this, and I'll tell you, I've talked to a lot of friends and buddies that like this idea. They live in an area where they think the demographic works. One of the things you mentioned is you went out and met with other people and to learn from them. That's the best thing to do. What am I about to step into here? Of course, nobody could say, well, this thing called COVID's coming, so be prepared for that. It's going to basically destroy half of your venue. But what are some things that you would advise to someone who lives in an area that doesn't have anything like this, but they've got a lot of car buddies, and they go, hey, this is kind of a cool thing. I've sold my business, or I'm at a point where I can retire. I have some capital that I want to invest in real estate, but I want to do something around my passion. What are some of the ways you advise them?
Well, Mark, I would say step one is really the real estate piece of the equation. So for me, it made sense to do it in downtown Indy because that's where I live, and it was very convenient for me. The one bonus about that is because we're in downtown Indy, there are a number of Indianapolis is very much a convention city for those that don't know, which of course has been very hard on Indy over the last couple of years. But there are a number of conventions in downtown Indy. So for us to be an event facility and be in downtown Indy, we do more events here than if we were out in one of the suburbs. But the trade-off is our cost of real estate is much higher here, probably double, maybe triple, what we could have done the same facility for in a more of an industrial kind of space that maybe was a little further out of town. So that to me is the number one trade-off. I think it would be in most cities without the event piece, it would be challenging to have a facility large enough to be able to store enough cars in a true urban setting. We're just barely outside the mile square in downtown Indy. So, you can imagine that the real estate prices here are quite a bit more than if we were 20 miles outside of town.
Absolutely. I know recently Patrick Long's Luftkult event took place in Indy at the old bottling facility, which was a wonderful venue. And I talked to some people, being a Porsche-phile, that said, why did he pick Indy? And I said, well, I know a lot about Indianapolis because the company I used to work with, we built a facility there. So I used to go to Indianapolis a lot and learned a lot of things like you mentioned, being a convention city, which I didn't know about. And it's a unique city in its look and feel. It's different. It's not massively big like a Chicago or spread out like an LA or anything, but it has these wonderful little unique quirks about it and the history and everything. So it sounds like it was a good choice for you and a proper place to be. And despite COVID, it sounds like things are going well.
Yeah, they are. And to your point, on the Luft event was awesome. I mean, it was so cool. It was a half a mile, probably here from where our facility is. We had a couple of people, in fact, who found us online and reached out to us to have their car stored here. They're shipping it in, for pickup and delivery. So it was great to have the event here. But yes, it's been it's a lot of word of mouth for us. And so over the last couple of years, the word is out, and that's made it a lot easier for us to attract folks.
I like to ask people about driving inspirations, people that were very influential or mentors in their lives. Is there somebody like that, either back in your technology world or with what you're doing today?
Yeah, I kind of back in the tech world. A good good buddy of mine by the name of Mark Hill was someone that was always Mark's. I love to tell Mark he's a few years older than me, and he was always just a little out in front. He also had a technology company, and he was really a great source of information and experience for me as I was going through in my own I'd never run a company before. I'd never started a company before. So, being able to lean on him for a lot of good information was great. And, a lot of it was just real basic stuff that I learned from him, which is you can't assume people want to buy your product. You got to go make sure that they want to buy your product, and you need to take care of your customers, and you need to have innovative solutions. And, what you find is so much of what I learned from Mark is applicable, whether it's a technology business or whether it's a car storage event facility. There are many, many parallels, and a lot of it just starts with having a plan, pursuing the plan, and treating people in the right way. I mean, there's so much of life that can be made so much better just by those basic rules.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all encounter companies or relationships with companies, especially these days online, where I often get off of a chat with somebody because nobody seems to want to talk to you anymore on a telephone. And you go, why are they making it so hard for me to give them my money? I mean, this is just ridiculous, And you can see, you wish you could put the president of the company in your seat as a buyer, a customer, and go, you see what's going on here? I always want to try to reach out and offer advice going, gosh, this could be so great if you would just think this way. But sometimes there's these barriers that companies put between us that I know why they do it, but they shouldn't.
Well, and it's when companies, cool entrepreneurial startups, right? Which I think my company was, Mark's company was the same way, and we ran those companies in a way that we never, I think in both cases, we never lost sight of the customer. And I think it's just the more companies get larger and they get acquired and they start focusing more on the financials, not that the financials are unimportant, but when the focus is primarily on that, I think that's when companies get into trouble and they lose that great entrepreneurial spark and that customer satisfaction that they typically have early on.
No doubt, no doubt. We'll take a short break and thank our sponsors again. We come back, I want to talk a little bit about challenges. So keep that thought in mind and we'll be right back. I've discovered Linkage. It's a new quarterly publication and website that covers the automotive market, driving, restoring, collecting, and discovering your passion for motor vehicles. Linkage is about experiences, opinions, and values. Linkage is an actual informed, reasoned opinion based on first-hand experiences. A talented Linkage team covers the automotive world, the people who share your passion and mine, smart, considered, rational, and experienced opinions, ones you can learn from and grow. That includes our passion that drives auctions and the collector car market. So come with me and join us on this journey. And be sure to use the code CARSYEAH when you subscribe, and they'll give you $10 off. Boom! Linkage, geared for the automotive life. Subscribe today at linkagemag.com. Did you know that Cars Yeah is in the top 1% of all podcasts based on listenership, according to Libsyn, the premier RSS feed for podcasts in the United States? That's right. And Cars Yeah is the only 5-day-a-week automotive-focused podcast for you to get your message into the ears of thousands of listeners daily from all over the world. Plus, DuPont Registry recommended Cars Yeah is one of their top 10 car podcasts for you to enjoy. Cars Yeah has experienced tremendous growth, plus your ads are evergreen, meaning they never go away. And more listeners find Cars Yeah every day for their daily dose of automotive inspiration. Do you want to expose your brand to a highly targeted list of automotive enthusiasts in a very unique and very personal way? Well, I can help you. Contact me, Mark Green, at mark@carsyeah.com or through the website at carsyeah.com today to learn more. So let's talk about this. We did talk about the COVID thing, which has affected so many people. And of course, over the last 2 years, boy, have I heard a lot of stories about how that has really made it challenging. Is there a big challenge in your business career, your life that you'd like to share? And how did you overcome that? What did you learn from it so it ended up being in some way a positive experience?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest ones we've had has been the whole COVID thing, and some of that was of a personal nature in that I'm very much an extrovert. I'm very much a person who likes to congregate and
Hmm.
meet with people and have face-to-face conversations. And COVID made that very difficult on a personal level. So I had to deal with that. My wife and I had some long conversations about that when we were both in the middle of that. But then also the way that it impacted the business, because we really had, about a third of our budget here at the club was around events. That quickly went to zero. And so,
Yeah.
and we also had 5 employees. We were just staffing up, going into that. We'd hired a chef. We had a manager, assistant manager, and
Wow.
admin.
Yeah.
And so we were really starting to go. And then that happened. And then next thing you know, it's Jeff and I looking at each other saying, well, I guess we kind of have to figure this out. And of course, storage became the biggest thing, for us for a while. We did do some events. We had some folks who still were up for doing some events, but it was that part was pretty much gone. So we just had to pivot. The way we thought about that, we had to change our spending structure pretty meaningfully. And it's really just now that we're beginning to really come back out of that. We're probably back at 50 to 70% of the event flow that we had beforehand. So it's still work. I always like the old, apply the old quote of, we're still getting the spruce goose off the end of the runway, or
Yeah.
hoping that we do.
Fly,
And
baby, fly.
yeah, it's not easy, but I feel much better today than I did year and a half ago, when it was I thought, boy, this was a really bad idea what we did here.
Well, the thing that I've learned from many, many people is be prepared, and having run a business, be conscious of your cash flow, conscious of the what ifs. We saw it back in 08, 09 when the economy dropped out and people stopped buying things. Oh boy, that was a challenging one. That one seemed to, well, for some people it corrected itself rather quickly. Others it took a much longer track. This one is kind of just like this lingering scab that just keeps, scabbing over, and you scrape it away and it keeps coming back. But I'm glad to hear you're getting back on track. But I think the key thing is always be prepared and make sure you pay attention to your cash flow, and that you have a runway in front of you for these kind of things, right? And knowing when to stop digging, because you go, especially when the government is mandating you can't open anymore or for a while. Who'd have thought we'd get to that point,
Right.
Yeah, it's just wild.
Yeah, it was very difficult. I mean, we were at a point where we would, the roller coaster ride, where we would have people call in, and we thought, okay, we're kind of coming out of COVID, at one point, and people would start booking events, and so we'd start kind of staffing up again. We'd book these events, we'd staff up, and then what happens? Then 2 months later, there's another wave, and
Right.
everybody's canceling their events, and so it's just really was really a difficult run for us. And I think it's true of particularly anyone who, events are part of what they do. It was very difficult to work through those times. We were fortunate that we had the car storage piece, which was actually went up at that period of time. So that was helpful.
Absolutely. 2 industries that got devastated, and many did: luxury touring, boat touring industry, and of course, car industry, which has been affected greatly, especially in the rental car markets. And a lot of these companies, and I didn't realize this, I knew they did it with the rental car companies, they sold a lot of their cars to try to generate revenue. And now, as things are starting to come out, everyone wants to go do something, and there's not enough cars to rent. So now you can't buy cars very well. So that, these guys buy massive lots. The other one was the cruise industry. I didn't realize that a lot of these huge cruise industries, they basically scrapped their boats. They sold them to scrap yards. And you don't really get a luxury cruise liner built in a couple months, so now they're all, oh my gosh, we don't have enough cruise ships. So guess what all this does? Raises prices, right? The
Right.
inflation word that we're all suffering from right now. So yeah, the backlog of this, I think, is going to be felt for a long time, but I'm glad you guys have figured out how to maneuver around this and so forth. I want to talk about a special vehicle in your life, because you talked about owning 15, 16 cars when you started this. I know that there's a first family hand-me-down car in your history that you shared with me earlier. And also BMW seemed to be kind of on your radar a bit. I'm a huge BMW fan, have many. I've got one, just put new tires on my M3 yesterday, which I think I'm one of the only guys at the tire shop that was excited to have new tires. Everybody else is grumbling about the cost and, I can't even get the tires I want. So let's talk about a special vehicle in your life.
Yeah, my folks were good enough. I grew up on a 600-acre farm in central Indiana, so
Wow.
we were
Okay.
kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I got my driver's license, and I'd been driving for 5-6 years on the farm because that's just what you did.
do. Yeah.
So my first car was a '68 Grand Prix that was kind of the hand-me-down from my folks. A little rusty around the fenders, but it got me around. But the first really cool car I had, and it was cool for multiple reasons, but was a '69 Camaro that a friend of ours had. They'd run it more as a drag car. They'd blown 3 different motors up in it, I think, and it was just sitting in a barn. And my dad and I knew them, and we were looking for a project. So we were able to buy the car from them and basically rebuild it. Pretty much from the ground up. And we didn't do the paint and body work, but we did pretty much everything else. And my dad, very much a car guy as well. He had a '62 Impala and a '67 Firebird and a '39 Ford Coupe that never quite got done along the way. But the Camaro was really it was a fun project because my dad and I did it together. It was really a cool car. It was a car that was kind of quote unquote known, on the west side of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
It wasn't the most powerful car, had a 327 in it, but it did pretty well and it looked really good, and it ended up being a really fun project for him and me.
I love those late 60s Camaros. They just had great looks about them. They're just one of those cars that's easily recognizable very quickly. I'm going to crawl into your skull here and be a bit of a car psychologist today. If you were manifest as a vehicle, what would Mike be, but more importantly, why?
That's a tough one. I think we all want to be sexy Ferraris or Lamborghinis, right? Or something along those lines. But that's not what I would say. I would, I probably would think more along the lines of, we spent a lot of time in Utah, and down southern Utah, there are a lot of the rock crawler Jeeps that guys build, right? And these crazy builds that will climb up about an 80% incline, it seems like. And when I think about overcoming obstacles in life, and you think about what kind of those really cool Jeeps are, and you watch them crawl over some of the boulders, and I've done a little bit of that, not anything that extreme. I think that's how I would probably characterize myself, is I've typically been able to overcome the obstacles in some way, shape, or form. It may not be very pretty, but we've gotten through these tricks and these problems and these obstacles along the way in life. So that's probably what I would say.
I've had a couple of guys on the show here that build those things, and they're crazy wild. And I watch videos on YouTube. How are they going up that hill or through those rock canyons? Or it looks like they're defying gravity to me.
It's crazy. You watch some of them, and watching them, they're within 2 or 3 degrees of going over. And I don't know how, when you're sitting in the seat,
how
if you didn't have, and they've got all the crazy gauges and all that tell them where they are. But without that, I would have no idea how you would know if you're about ready to go over on your top.
Wow.
Because I did about a much more of a rookie version of that, and I thought we were going over on our top, and we probably weren't even close.
Well, yeah, and there's been plenty of videos of guys that don't quite make it, and end up bouncing down a hill and so forth. It seems like you like to give back. You were successful in business, and you invest in a number of tech companies, and you also serve on the board of nonprofits. Those are the ways that you like to give back to help other people that are trying to be successful?
Yeah, my wife and I both feel strongly about that. My wife has been as active or more active than I have in a number of nonprofits that we've tried to support financially, as well as whether it's as an advisor, whether it's on the board, whatever in whatever way we can serve best. There's one particular one, Youth for Christ, that my wife was on the board of. That's more of an inner city faith-based organization, but they have one special program here in Indianapolis called the Wheels program. And so they have kind of a mini silo about a mile from where our building is. And they take kids from the inner city who are interested in body work, in auto repair, in anything to do with cars, welding, and they teach these kids. They have volunteers that come in and teach them how to perform these services, and certainly, as we all know, where the labor market is today, there are plenty of those opportunities available.
Oh yeah,
and so that's been a particular program that ties in nicely with what we do over here at the club, and it's been fun to be a part of that and see that program grow over the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, it's tremendous. I love it. How about a book? Is there a book you'd like to share with our listeners today that you've enjoyed?
I was a crazy reader when I was a kid, and I don't know what's happened to me, but it's sitting down to read a book I'm just not very good at it these days. However, I would say the kind of my Bible I tend to go back to personally and professionally is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've read it a half a dozen times. I give it to people. I've made my kids all read it because I think it's a little bit back to what we were talking about, from a mentoring role from Mark, is there's just so many basic lessons that that book applies to, and how we think about business and how we treat people. And I just have always really enjoyed it, and I think it's one anyone can learn from.
I love it too. It's one of my favorites. It's a book I go back to. I did the same thing, gave my kids copies, and Stephen Covey, of course, he evolved that into different aspects of life. But I think my favorite is what I end up doing every day is first listen to understand, then speak to be understood. So so important in everything that we do and how we learn. I'm going to take you on the ultimate drive today, Mike. That means I'm going to pick you're going to pick any car in the world you would like to drive in, any person, living or deceased, and you can go anywhere you want to go. So the checkbook is wide open, my friend. What does that ultimate drive look like for you?
Probably for me, Mark, it would be my dad. I lost my dad 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And it was just, the circle of life. He had cancer. I was able to spend a lot of time with him, later in life. But back to, him building cars, he had restored, I use that term slightly loosely, a 63 Corvette convertible.
Nice.
And he began to get sick at the end, and he was kind of struggling to get it really repaired all the way. But I've ended up with that car.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Which is just really, really great.
Yeah.
The car was unsafe at any speed when I got it. Fortunately, we found a mechanic a good C2 Corvette guy who made it safe. That's the car that I would really enjoy. Taking Dad and hopping in that Corvette, and if I was going to pick the venue, he and I both played a little golf, and I would, not that I could throw the golf clubs in the trunk of the vet, I'd have to ship them, but we'd probably go to Monterey. That area. We'd go play Pebble Beach. We'd drive up and down the coast out there and have a great time, and that'd be a lot of fun.
That sounds wonderful. Absolutely. I love it. Well, you've taken us on a fun ride today, and I'm glad we finally connected and I could share what you're doing there at Silo Auto Club and Conservancy with my listeners today. I think it's great. I'll put links to your website, which is very cool, on your show notes page here in the Cars Yeah website. Before I let you go, is there maybe a success quote, a mantra, inspirational thought you might share with the listeners today?
I think for me, the thing that I tend to think about is how many mistakes I've made in life. I've had a lot of great success. I've had a lot of fun personally and professionally, but I think about, how many times it could have gone horribly wrong, with some of the decisions and mistakes I made. And that's what I tend to focus on, is the fact that it's not whether or not you're going to make some mistakes along the way. It's really about how you recover from those, and how you learn from those mistakes, and hopefully not make those mistakes again in the future. So I would say that. I would say it's just when you make those mistakes, it's just figuring out how to grind your way out of those situations, learn from it, and gain some wisdom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Embrace those things. I've heard the old saying that failure is not an option, but from many professionals, failure is imperative. because it steps you out of that conservative zone that you get yourself into where you're not daring to do things differently. Race car drivers, I've talked to a lot of them on this show, and those guys definitely step out of that comfort zone every time they're on a car, but that's how you end up being a winner. Sometimes you might hit the wall, but I think it's a great way to go through life is to dare yourself and challenge yourself and get into those uncomfortable places and then embrace what you learn from them. Change your mindset. It was a hard thing for me to learn for a long time, for sure.
Yeah, I forget whose quote it was. It's some famous racer that if everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough,
yeah,
right?
Sounds like something Mario Andretti would say, or AJ Foyt, or I think AJ's was got halfway through the corner and ran out of talent. But it's the same thing, you know. He need to get a little more talented to make it through that corner at that speed. So it's a great way to go through life, I think. So again, I'll put links to Silo Auto Club and Conservancy on Mike's show notes page. Check it out. Check them out if you're in Indianapolis. Look Mike up and maybe pay them a visit. That would be kind of fun. And go to a venue, or better yet, rent their space for a venue and go have some fun. Mike, thank you for being so generous today with your time and your expertise and sharing your stories with us. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate you having me on the show, and it's been a lot of fun. And thanks again for all you do in the automotive industry as well.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I have fun talking to inspiring automotive enthusiasts every day, just like you. Take care. Today's vehicles are essentially computers on wheels, and it takes more than a wrench and oil to keep them humming. That's why Cars Yeah supports TechForce Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to driving tomorrow's workforce of skilled technicians forward. Techs keep our cars, trucks, airplanes, and fleets rolling. Yet there's a massive tech shortage because many young people don't know it's no longer a blue-collar job. Today, it's a new-collar career. It involves computers, technology, it's in high demand, you get paid really well, and you can live and work anywhere in the country. I know you're passionate about cars, trucks, and motorcycles, and you can help pass that passion on to the next generation of techs so our rides keep rolling down the road. Visit techforce.org today and learn how.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.